Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. It's a glorious day today after a very, very stormy night. I hope everybody got through that okay. It was crazy last night. I saw it at 3 in the morning. I saw the winds coming up. But it was, if you thought it was stormy here in New Orleans and along the Gulf Coast, the Washington Huskies got stormed in the national championship game. Congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines, their first national title since 1997, and really that's only their second in decades. But congrats, that team was definitely a juggernaut. Only the fourth team in recent history that's gone 15-0. LSU in 19, of course, Clemson did it, and then last year with Georgia. But I'm going to tell you this, that team right there, LSU, that's still the best team of all time. But let's talk about this game real quick, because Michael Penix, who was the runner-up to Jaden Daniels in the Heisman Trophy, looked far from it. He was terrible last night. He got hurt in the second half, so he gutted it through, but it was a far cry from what he did all season. But there was a play that they almost had this game or back in it. Down 20-13, they had muzzled their way back, and then they threw a long pass to Roma Dunze, and he caught a 40-yard pass, and it would have got them down to 35, chance to tie it. They called holding on it, very questionable call. That changed the whole complexion of the game, and then they got 2 late touchdowns to make the score a little worse than the game actually was. But congrats to the Wolverines. But that 19 team with LSU, that team beat 7 top 10 teams, okay? Never happened before. They beat 4 of the top 5. Never happened before. They beat all 4 teams, the other ones in the top 5. And they also beat, when you talk about 5 teams that went 60-4, except the times they played LSU, and LSU beat them by an average of 20 points. I'm talking about Oklahoma, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and believe it or not, Florida was really good that year. So these teams are 16-4, and LSU beat the snot out of them, too. That's the best team of all time. And if you look at the players in the NFL, from Burrow to Jefferson to Jamar Chase, on, that team would have done some good numbers, but this defense of Michigan was probably better. Moving on, NFL playoffs. How about this? They're set now. No, you don't see New Orleans on there. They won the game against the Falcons. We'll get to that in a second, but there's the playoff setup right now. You got Saturday, Sunday, and even a Monday night game with the Eagles going against Tampa. But before that, Miami at KC seems the most intriguing on here. That is going to be a night game on Saturday. You got some other matchups. The Cowboys, they host the Packers. That should be fun to watch. There's a bunch of them out here, but week 2 is when it really gets good. Hey, speaking of the Saints, they were 5-7 on this show. I said they have a chance to win their last 5 games and go 10-7. At worst, 9-8. At least I got this one right. They went 9-8. Not enough. Too little, too late to go to the playoffs. But I'm gonna tell you this: they thrashed the Falcons, and anytime you could do that from a kid that sat in on the 62-7 loss in 1973. I loved it. Total domination, but it's crazy. Derek Carr throws 4 touchdowns, but Jameis Winston, who played 10 seconds, is the only one anybody's talking about. The whole Dennis Allen, Arthur Smith feud at the end for getting that touchdown, and, you know, the coach blaming the players and the players saying, hey, we want to help this guy, Jamal Williams, get a TD. I get it. But Arthur Smith, that coach is now fired. You're looking at it. How about the Pelicans? They're 22-15. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. They're now tied with Dallas and Sacramento for that 5th spot. And they beat Sacramento, who's tied 4 out of 4 times already. How about that? That's unbelievable. They play tomorrow at Golden State. Then they have the Nuggets and 2 at Dallas before coming back home on the 17th. And how about John Summerall, the new Tulane coach, was at the Pels game the other night. How fun was that? He was over there, and he was at the game. There's David Griffin, and they talked to, that's the GM, of course, or the player personnel guy, and they also talked to Jen Hale after the game right there. But he's feeling really good because Ty Thompson, the top recruit in the history of Tulane Greenway football, is coming next week. And guess what? He's going to be on this show right here on Primetime Sports. Check that out. And by the way, how about LSU? Huge win over Texas A&M on the road. That was a big win, 68-53. And LSU in recruiting got the #1 player in class of 25 at the wide receiver position, the quarterback position, and Harlan Berry, the #1 running back in that class in the country. They got him coming too. And Tyrone Hughes is coming on this show, y'all, right here on Primetime Sports. Tyrone Hughes, David Grubb. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. And as you know, if you watch this show, it's normally 3 guests. But today I decided just on 2 and give them some extra time because they've got things to say. And one of them hasn't been on this show since 2016. And he is a Hall of Famer. That's right, a Saints Hall of Famer inducted in 2015. His name is Tyrone Hughes. And he went to the great St. Aug High School, the Purple Knights. He graduated in 1988, went on to a great career at Nebraska. And then that's right, he came on home to the New Orleans Saints and was a Pro Bowl kick returner, punt returner, defensive back. The man did it all. And his name, right, once again, Tyrone Hughes.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome back to the show, my friend. It's been 8 years almost.
It's been a long time.
I got to say this. There was one game in '94. I'm going to bring it back because I'm sure you. You had an NFL record, 374?
Well, 307 kick return, 347 total.
347
Yeah,
total,
punt,
that's
kick
right.
return, yeah.
And that was an NFL record for most return yards in a game.
In a single game.
And
yeah.
I don't know if is it still a record.
So far, it's still there.
A record.
It's still there. That was a lot of work I put in that day.
Well,
you gotta
I was at the game.
We were going back and forth as far as scoring, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that game was also and still is has the NFL record for the most combined returns for touchdown and yardage in a single game because I had 2 kickoff returns. For touchdowns. Toby Wright had a 99-yard fumble return, which definitely it had some discrepancies about that because he got up from underneath the pile like, how was you not down?
Right.
But he ran a 99-yard fumble return, and then you had oh God, I can't remember. Bailey, I think his name was Robert Bailey.
Yeah.
Who back then when you punted the ball in the end zone, it wasn't automatically down. You literally had to go and touch it and make it down. So it was, as long as it's rolling around, it was still live.
Yeah, and he picked it up.
Robert Bailey picked it up from the back of the end zone.
I remember.
Ran it all the way back. Now you got guys coming on the field, coming off the field. He's weaving through them. The refs are running down the field with him, and they gave him a touchdown. So and I think it was like a 109-yard punt return.
See, I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I remember coming back for that game, and it was crazy. And that was the Rams, right?
Yes.
And then I remember I had come back in town from D.C. 4 years earlier, or 5 years earlier, when Flipper Anderson.
Oh, and Jim, and I heard about that game.
Well, he had 300 and some yards receiving.
Him and Everett tore it up, and actually we
that was
watched
a Sunday night game. I remember
watched the film on that game that week, and that was the first game I started as a cornerback. I had already played nickel and dime.
You had a few picks in your career.
The opening series, Jerome Bettis goes out to the flat, and the ball goes through his hands, comes right to me. That was a pick. First time starting as a corner. Again, started as nickel and dime, but being on the outside as a corner. So in that game, we're watching all of the film from that Flipper Anderson, Jim Everett, and keep in mind, this was Jim Everett's first game with us back against them.
Ah, okay.
And so he had, we were watching them, and anytime they get inside the 20-yard line, they would do this skinny post. And they ran it, they motioned over to the weak side. So I'm one-on-one with Flipper Anderson. And around the 15-yard line, and I'm like, I know he's running that skinny post. And he ran off, and the minute he broke to that post, I jumped it.
He jumped it.
And when I looked up, he broke to the corner.
Oh, snap.
So I'm like this here. Ball is just going over my head, and I'm running to the sideline, and Jim Moore Jr. said, "You broke on that skinny post." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Hey,
at least you're watching film.
At least we watching film." You know, he said, "Welcome to the NFL." And that was the first touchdown I had scored on me as well. So
how about is that the loneliest feeling?
Oh, it is. It is. But like I said, you got to forget it.
Yeah, you got to forget it
because that game I played started at corner.
Yeah.
But when we would go to third down, I would go to nickel or dime.
Okay.
And then, so that meant I was in on first down. Typically, I'm coming in only on third down. So I was in on first down, second down, third down, then had to go return a punt.
Uh-huh.
Then when they kicked, if they scored a touchdown, I had to go back and return a kickoff.
Yeah.
So I was doing all that whole game.
So you went from the Mora. I guess you would have been into the Dicka era, no?
No. Well, Dicka came in. When Dicka came in is when I went to Chicago.
That's when you went to Chicago, ironically, and he comes down here.
And I go there,
Yeah, y'all got the better of that trade. The Bears did, I think, because it didn't quite work out for Dicka down here.
Well, it didn't work out for me in Wannstedt in Chicago either.
Oh, Wannstedt, that's right.
That was not there.
Because he was one of Jimmy Johnson's boys from University of Miami, then we were Cowboys.
Yeah,
and
I went with the money instead of, because I actually had an offer from San Francisco, which I was going to take. At the time, because I know, hey, playoffs, Super Bowl contention, and all this other stuff, but they wanted to pay me my signing bonus in over 2 years. I'm like, no.
He's like, y'all got a great franchise.
Yeah.
However, I need to get paid now. I got things to buy, all right? Here's the other thing I was just thinking, because I heard something. I'm watching the game I guess it was the night game, when Hardy, he changed his name, so I get confused, returns the punt. But earlier that day, I had heard that, Rashid Shaheed had made the Pro Bowl, right?
Yes, I saw
and
that.
He was the fourth returner, they said, in Saints history, to make the Pro Bowl. And I immediately thought of you, because I'm not sure. I think you were the first, right?
I was the first.
Yeah, was Reggie Bush one?
No, I don't think Reggie went. It was myself, Michael Lewis.
Lewis was the one. And then the guy I'm talking about, Hardy.
Hardy went, and then
now Shaheed. So I thought about you. There's Michael Lewis right there, the beer man. We know his great story. And let's get to it right now. Y'all got inducted in the same year. The Saints generally induct, I think this year they only did one with Jabari Greer.
They only did one with Jabari,
but generally two guys every year, and then they also have a service guy, somebody that's done great things for the organization. But you and Lewis came in the same year, and I loved it because
no. Michael, actually, we're about the same. You were a year and age apart.
Right.
But Michael came in probably. I think.
Well, you came into the Saints Hall of Fame though.
The same year.
The Hall of Fame.
Okay,
y'all came to the Hall of Fame at the same year in 15, correct?
Yes.
And you're wearing the jacket, and I love it. And I really like that jacket a lot. But my point is when you get that call, man. When you get that call that says you're in the Hall of Fame, I mean, the Saints have been around for 57 years, right? What's that feel like?
And not only the Hall of Fame, but I was also nominated as one of the top 50 players in Saints history.
Wow.
When that team came out. So that was a great honor as well. But obviously, anytime you're getting inducted to a Hall of Fame, it just shows that the appreciation that team at least had for you, or that you did something phenomenal,
right?
And put in the work.
You put in the work. Here's the thing: you played 4 seasons, so it's not like you had this body of work that was like, oh my God, he's done so many things over the years, and maybe he wasn't super great, but he did enough to make you. You obviously were great. You're only in there for 4 years, and they putting you in, right?
Well, and again, when you look at what people don't realize is how, I would say, how valuable I was to the Saints.
You were.
Meaning within the secondary, because what a lot of people don't realize, I played every position in the secondary. I played free safety, strong safety, nickel, dime, and corner. And typically, when Hazlitt was there as the defensive coordinator and Jim Moore Jr., I was always responsible for covering the #1 receiver whenever we would go to a dime defense.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, you're not that good, but we need you to cover the best guy on the team.
You're fast, you're strong. I mean, to play all 4 positions, people don't realize that just doesn't happen. I look back to, like, and this is going to be pre-both of us, but Steve Foley was a legendary Tulane quarterback, and he goes to Denver as a cornerback, and he ends up having the most interceptions in Denver history. He still holds that record. but he played cornerback, and then he moved to safety because obviously the wheels aren't still there. But the fact is, you did it your entire time. You know, he did it because he had to.
Well,
you're physical, you're smart, and you're fast.
But also keep in mind, I was a receiver.
Right.
The majority on the offensive side of the ball, the majority of my career up until I got drafted. The Saints drafted me. I was a receiver and playground offensive guy, running back, whatever. At St. Aug, I was a wingback / receiver. Go to Nebraska, same things, wingback. Then they started throwing the ball, so now they moved me to receiver my junior and senior year, and I ended up breaking my wrist in a Colorado game returning a punt my junior year.
Yeah.
And I had a cast on. We were going into the bowl game my junior year to play against Miami. That's when they had Horace Copeland, Lamar Thomas, and Kevin Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And so, was it Kevin Williams? Kevin Williams.
Yeah.
Short guy, fast. So basically, so I went to Osborne, Coach Osborne. I'm like, Coach, won't you let me play? Because I got a cast on. I can't do anything offensively. Yeah. I'm like, won't you let me go play on the defensive side of the ball? And he was like, well, I'm not sure. So I went and talked to the defensive back coach.
Wow, really? That's how it came about?
I went and talked to the defensive back coach. I'm like, we're going to be on television. I'm not about to sit on the bench and just do a kickoff return. So I go talk to the defensive back coach, and Coach Darlington, I talked to him. He's like, well, yeah, we could definitely use you with all of the speed they have, and I was one of the fastest guys on the team. So they tried me out in practice, and everything worked out fine, and I had no technique, backpedaling, and all of this other stuff.
Just raw.
I understood coverages from being on the receiver side, but no technique. So when we got in the game, it's like, you got him.
Oh, boy, it's like the playground.
And that's
like the playground.
That was it. And he caught some passes. I broke up some passes, so it wasn't pretty. So when we come back my senior year, I go to Coach Osborne in the spring. I'm like, Coach, won't you let me play both ways? And he's like, well, Ty, if you play both ways, you're only going to be a 75% player. I said, well, you know what, Coach? My 75 better than some of the 100 we got.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to say something. Since you mentioned Coach Osborne, I say, you know, Tyrone, I say this frequently, and that's him right there. But I say this a lot. When I grew up, and I look at, honestly, into my professional career from 1970 to 2000, there's probably a handful of teams that could say, man, we might have been the best of that whole 30-year era. But to me, I've broken it down so many times, it's Nebraska. It's Nebraska. I put one, and Oklahoma, Miami didn't have much in the 70s, so if you count that. But you had a lot of teams that had some sparkles. But Nebraska was the most consistent, great team. Double-digit wins when you only played 11 games back then, right? Wasn't no 15-0s.
No.
And like Michigan got last night and LSU got recently. But the fact is that I took these actual pictures in 2018.
Yeah, that's the new stadium.
Because I was there doing a game the year Scott Frost got there, and it was the first game of the year. And I too have a picture because I'm not a guy that jumps in pictures with people all the time. I mean, you know them all. You know these people. But I said, you know, Tom. This was practice, you know, the day before the game. And I said, listen, man, I'm not the guy that does this, but can I get a picture with you? And that's one of my favorite pictures, not of me. I look terrible. But it's Tom Osborne, man.
Exactly.
I mean, arguably the greatest coach of all time.
And he just sent out an email to all of the players saying how much he really, you know, looking at the game today and how much he really appreciated how we played back in the day. I mean, it was great just to hear that from him, that he sent out to all players.
All of them.
You know, and that's got to be about 1,000 guys.
I remember until the Georgia beatdown of TCU last year. I remember I was producing the Braves. And I remember coming home. It wasn't, obviously wasn't Brave season, but I remember watching the other producer with me. I went to his house. We watched that national championship. We did the Hawks. That's what it was. We had a Hawks game. We got back to his house and watched the second half of the floor. You were gone. You weren't playing. But it was when they decimated Florida State, was it?
Yeah.
And they beat them by like 100. And the thing is, my point is like as a Nebraska alum, and we know they've had some lean years the last 20 for y'all standards, for your standards, and I know it's hard. But the fact is that how proud y'all won 2 titles right back to back. I mean, right around that same time, mid-90s. You were a pro football player at the time.
Exactly.
But you still have that Nebraska pride, right? What was that like, just watching your coach?
I mean, it was great, but it was also like a sorrowful feeling because it's like we could have did that.
Right.
Why, you know, and just think if we would have won 92, 91, 92, and then now you come back 93, 94, just how great
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It would have made Coach Osborne lifted him up even more.
Well, exactly. Because he could have so many more titles that were so close.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go back to '84 when he could have just kicked the extra point and tied.
Turner Gill and those guys.
Against Miami.
Yeah.
And they would have had another title.
Went for two.
But he just went for two because there were no ties back then. You ended the game as a tie. But they would have won the national title. Miami Hurricanes had lost.
And they got voted.
Right.
Back then, you know.
It was all voting. It was all voting.
Yeah.
Voting was all the way to 98. That was the first year they just played a game actually decided. But you went to the most, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, I grew up watching the Otis Washington coached St. Aug Purple Knights, right? The late 70s.
Yeah.
And those games in the Dome, and the Dome was just having, but you went to me. In my lifetime, I'm going to say this, and I know I'm just talking about the years I was in New Orleans because I left for 30 years, but St. Aug was revered, and they still are. And I'm talking about football, but they're revered as a school. I mean, I have so much respect. I was in the Catholic League playing sports against them, and I always man, when we beat them in anything, we certainly wasn't benefit football, okay? But anything else, and we did some, I was like, that's the best win because y'all have such pride, and you do it the right way. You have great young men at school.
Yes.
So coming from St. Aug and picking a school like Nebraska, talk about that transition and why you think both institutions are great.
Well, one of the things was I wanted to go out of state after recruiting because I always believed that not having been out of state or traveled that much, we went a couple of times on trips as a family. But again, you're coming out of a all black male high school,
sure.
And at the time, Nebraska was one of the most revered, like you're saying, revered school. It was always Nebraska and Oklahoma playing for the Big 8 title, playing for the national championship because they were winning. And kids were going to school up until they started this NIL.
When you were in high school, I was in college at LSU, and you beat us like a drum twice in the bowl game.
But kids were going to school then because teams were winning. That's why at Alabama, Nick Saban did so well. Now with the NIL, they going wherever you're getting paid. And I'm like, I wish we'd have had an NIL.
Let's get paid, right? NIL would have made my life easier.
But that was the thing to do. Nebraska was the place to go, and one of the things was coming out of Louisiana, I was the offensive player of the year in football, and I was the athlete of the year because I did all 4 sports.
Right.
But going to Nebraska, and this is the thing that I had with a lot of these kids when they hit in the transfer portal, going to Nebraska, I'm coming there as the MVP of the state of Louisiana, which Mickey Joseph had went the year before, and Reggie Cooper was the offensive and defensive players of the year. So, LSU was kind of hot back then, like, how all these guys, top guys going to Nebraska. But when I got there, they had the MVP from just about every other state as well at my position. So you had to compete.
Yeah.
And that's what brought that level of competition out of guys.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everybody won't come in as a starter, and if you're not a starter, hey, I'm going somewhere else and getting a transfer portal like a semi-pro ball.
Tyrone, you grew up here, right? You grew up your whole life here. So as a kid, we're 5 years apart, but as a kid, I came in, I was around a baby when the Saints were starting. But I mean, I start remembering seasons around 70, 71, all right? I'm 5 or 6, right? So, but we never won, right? And then in '86 we started winning, and I was in college at the time, and then they won till 93 or so. But you came in on the tail end of that 7-8 year season when they were winning consistently. Lost 4 playoff games, but they were winning, and then they gave pride. So what was it like coming as a hometown guy that grew up mostly losing, and then you're on the Saints team that you had? I'm assuming was Swilling still there?
Swilling had left. Swilling had left and went to
the Lions.
The Lions,
right?
And Bobby left and went to Atlanta
that year, right?
So I still had Ricky, Sam, and Vaughn to play with, and it was just amazing when you talk about Sam Mills, how they call him the field mouse, and how much
and Willie.
Me and Willie came in together as rookies, and so when you look at all of those guys on how they handled themselves, and how much like Sam Mills would always talk. Gene Atkins, Gene Atkins called me Ninth Ward because I was born in the lower 9, but I grew up in the 7th Ward. Gene Atkins would call me Ninth Ward, so it was a great feeling to have these guys talking to me, and giving me advice, and it's like, You know, it's just,
You're
it was
talking
just
about the Dome Patrol.
yeah.
Other than Atkins, you mentioned those other three guys.
But Sam, yeah,
I mean,
you
Sam,
know,
come on, that's like listening to the Lord. I mean, come on, Sam's wise.
But not only that, he was the center, the front line, one of the front line 5 guys on my kickoff return team.
I mean,
and he was the starting. This like usually you're gonna have backups on that.
Right.
Sam was like, no, I'm going. He said we're gonna get this going.
First Pro Football Hall of Famer, our first Saints ever. And then you have, I mean, may they rest in peace, Vaughn Johnson, who was on this show.
Yes.
I've had Vaughn. Sam Mills, obviously, I never had because he played at Carolina and then he didn't come back.
But he has a statue in front of the stadium.
In front of the stadium there, and he's one of the greatest here also. Hey, I got to talk about the Saints because there was a big thing with the game on Sunday. This would be the only time in the history, I think, of the Saints that they can just beat the Falcons by 30-plus points like a redhead stepchild. And all we're talking about is firing the coach because of a play at the end of the game. I mean,
not the coach, the quarter, James. Well, the coach, but it's still the end of the coach. Well, they've been hollering about firing Dennis.
I know, but they're hollering louder now.
Yeah,
because I saw Ben Watson, who we represented when I was an agent before he went to Drew Rosenhaus. He was a Pat Dye Jr., and that was who I worked with.
Okay.
And so, you know, Ben was a Saint, and if people that know Ben, he's a strong Christian man.
Exactly.
He came out there publicly and like, this guy's got to go. He's lost his team, and he's lost his, you know, because if he's going out there, this is the whole fight with, obviously, Arthur Smith, who's now gotten fired. But the point is, you know what the drill is. Jameis came in. The team decided, hey, we're going to give Jamal Williams a chance to get a touchdown. And then they let it happen. And you've been vociferous in your opinion on this on Facebook. And you were on a radio show yesterday on WBOK. I want your take on this whole thing. You're a player. I'm not. I want to hear what Tyrone Hughes has to say.
My disagreement or my argument came with Shannon Sharp was saying as, Jameis Winston needs to be cut and all that. First of all, he's putting everything on Jameis Winston like it was his decision alone.
Right.
They said, they asked the coach, Dennis told him no. They got out there and the offensive lineman and some of the other guys suggested this, we're going to get Jamal a touchdown. So everybody agreed, according to Eric McCoy. Eric McCoy was in there.
Yeah.
Jimmy Graham came out and said
McCoy's the team leader, man.
Because the thing was, it was Eric McCoy. I mean, it was going to be Jamal Williams or Jimmy Graham was going to get the touchdown. So they already had it set in their head. This was going to happen. So they go out. The only issue I had was the fact that it was a victory formation. Shannon said, let them know y'all going to run the ball. Okay, fine. That didn't happen. One of the things you're taught in the NFL, even in victory formation, especially in victory formation on the offensive side, is be prepared because you never know when those defensive linemen are going to jump or try to come across and cause some kind of havoc.
They've done it before.
And typically, they're always doing it.
Yeah.
And typically, that's going to cause a fight with the offense.
Right.
So in this situation, I don't have a problem with what they did because of the reason why they were doing it.
Yeah.
And people are like, Dennis Allen has no control over the team. I don't care if it was Dennis Allen, Sean Payton, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Parcells, whomever. If the team, understand it, the team runs, it's a team game. The team runs the team.
Right on.
The coaches coach the team, but it's the players' team. And so if the players want to do it, I don't know. Shannon's talking this, I would have jumped offside. If them offensive linemen say they want to do something,
right, it's happening.
Ain't no way in hell you going to go against them.
It's happening. They're big boys. And a lot of those guys are the team leaders. I'm going to say this, so if Tyrone had just not, another St. Aug guy, I like what I love that Jimmy had his back. This Jimmy
had his back, and then Eric McCoy came out saying, Eric McCoy came and said.
And I'm going to tell you, you can say what you want about Jameis. I respect the heck out of him. I was telling somebody this yesterday. This guy had a choice to go to a lot of places. He came to be Drew's understudy, thinking he was going to be the guy. He came in and he did a great job leading the team to I think it was a 5-2 record, and then he got hurt. Mm-hmm. People forget that, and he basically said this, And he's been a good soldier the whole way, and his teammates love him.
The locker room loves Jameis Winston. I don't care what's going on. The locker room, understand this, folks, the locker room, those players love Jameis Winston. They understand what he's been through, what type of player he is in that locker room. So all of this stuff that Shannon Sharp is talking about, get it out your head. I don't care if you agree with it or not. That's your opinion. My opinion is they did what they did. Atlanta should have been prepared for it. Oh, well. It didn't happen. It shouldn't, let me say that again, let me rephrase that. It shouldn't have happened in the victory formation, but it did, so you should have been prepared for it. But I'm all for the reason why they did it, not the fact that they did it or tried to embarrass the other team. They had no thoughts of Atlanta or the coach or whatever. This was something the team wanted to do for this particular player, and they did it.
Do you agree with the coach being upset?
He's supposed to, I can agree with him being upset in the locker room.
Right.
You don't go. First of all, as that other coach coming, we'd have been fighting.
Right.
We would have been fighting.
I'm going to tell you
something. But once I got into the locker room, I'd have addressed that situation. I definitely wouldn't have apologized.
Do you remember when LSU beat Bama 5 times in a row, but the year before that, in the early 2000s, Nick Saban was early in his career at LSU. I think it was 2002 maybe. And he got beat 30-0 at home against Alabama. And Alabama wasn't really great back then. But Dennis Franchione was the coach, and he came to midfield and chewed Saban out because apparently he'd heard some video about Saban saying he was going to whip Bama's butt, and that's why they rubbed it in on us. But I've never seen, like, you're talking about chewing people out at midfield is rare, but immediately when you said something about Smith and him doing it, I thought about that moment. People forget. I remember where I was in Atlanta at Roost Chris Steakhouse, and I was going to the first Pelicans. I mean, it was the Hornets then. Hornets versus Hawks game. And I remember, like, thinking, your boy's getting chewed out badly. I mean,
well, look at Deion and just happened last year. I mean, when he was 2 years ago at Jackson State, Deion and Eddie Robinson.
Eddie Robinson's son, yeah. And he just, that was uncomfortable and awkward, right? Well, I got to tell you, and there's nothing uncomfortable about you or awkward. You're one of our great, great players, not just on the pro level, obviously the high school level here. You're a legend. And I wanted people that don't know exactly who you are because, you know, we're getting older and older, and the fans are getting younger and younger. And a lot of them never seen you play. Mm-hmm. And when we talk
YouTube, that's what they do now. We didn't have YouTube when I was playing.
Or here's what I tell them: you better ask somebody. You better ask somebody and use the Google machine, because then you'll find out. This is one of the great ones. Look for that Rams game in 1994, and we'll see who is not a Hall of Famer. Okay. So we give gifts on this show, Tyrone, and here I go. I have a Task Performance shirt. And this is the softest shirt you'll ever have. I don't know if you got it, but this is feel that, and you're going to throw rocks at all your other shirts. And this is a Mr. John's gift certificate.
Yes.
Yeah, so enjoy yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. I really
St.
do.
Aug legend right here.
Purple Knights.
New Orleans Saints. And I got show the shoes up here. You got to pop those shoes.
You got to get the shoes.
Get the shoe. Look at these Saints shoes. You got to be a Hall of Famer to get those, because I know I ain't got nothing like that. That's my man. I appreciate you so much. And look him up once again. I loved your opinion on that. We'll talk more Saints coming up because I have David Grubb. We're going to talk about a lot of things. David Grubb's doing a lot of good things. I know he's worked with you some.
Yes, I talk to him several days a week on WBOK, him and Reggie Flood.
Yes, Reggie Flood.
Yes.
Well, he's going to come on. I haven't had David on in quite a while either. I think it was around the time you were on, maybe more recent than that. But he's coming on because we want to talk about a lot of things. He's doing a lot of great things right now himself, but also the Pelicans. That's where I met him. I used to cover the Pelicans every single game, and since that time I've weaned myself down and not doing as much, and he's been the guy that when I first met him, he hadn't been around the Pelicans a lot in the media, and now he's at every game. And he loves it, and he does a great job, but he covers out everything. The guy knows his sports, and I know he's also a Michigan fan, so he's got to be very happy about what happened last night. But we will talk about that and so much more right here on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll at the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Inspired by the culture and spirit of New Orleans, the contemporary abstract and figurative work of Tony Mose and the urban expressionist art and jewelry of Tracy Mose are now on display and available at Esom Art Galleries. Esom Art Galleries are artist-owned and are located in Uptown New Orleans on Magazine Street and on Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter. Esom Art Galleries, inspiration from the soul of New Orleans.
Sorry. We were, he caught us. Right when that music, we're supposed to stop talking. I should have told you.
That's my.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, I got to thank my man Tyrone Hughes. It's so good to see him again. Boy, he was vociferous, like I said in his segment, about the whole Jameis Winston thing. And you know what? I'm glad he had his say, because he is a guy that has played the game on a high level. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer in the Saints Hall of Fame, not the Pro Football, but the Saints Hall of Fame. So his opinion means more to me than almost anybody out there, and I'm glad I got it. But my next guest, I can't wait, because I love his opinions too. I got to meet him about 5-6 years ago at a Pelicans game, and that's when I was weaning myself off of doing mostly daily coverage of Pelicans, and I was more kind of doing, this show, actually. So he's been doing it ever since. This guy's been, every time I do go to a game, it seems like he's sitting in there, and for years it was with Ali Cosell with the bird rights, and they would just be sitting there talking talking about each play. They're breaking each play down. I mean, I'm sitting there watching games, and these guys like, can you believe he did the pick and roll? But here he is, David Grubb. You're doing so many things now, man. Congratulations.
I'm busy, but you'd rather be busy than not.
And I'm going to say, I've watched you. I remember talking to you, David. You were on the show, first of all, I don't know, probably about that time, 5-6 years ago. But I remember talking to you about, you said, hey, if you know of anybody, where I can call some games. And I remember thinking about this, because I sat next to you doing games. I said, you'd be great at this. I'm thinking, I'm sure you've done it before. But now I'm so proud when I go. Last year I went to 12 Tulane games, and I'm most of the time you were there doing the game, calling it on television on one of the ESPNs. I'm assuming, yeah. So, dude, you're getting it done. I mean, you're climbing, and you're doing so many things. But how does that make you feel?
It's been fulfilling, because I'm getting to satisfy all of my sports urges.
Yeah.
I love the communication of interviewing people and talking about the bigger issues in the game. You know that was always my focus from jump. And then just the diet of real basketball.
Right.
Basketball is my passion.
Same.
And to get there and sit with those games, talk to coaches, and then analyze the game as it's happening is a dream come true. And it's rare when you're not a former Division I athlete or a former coach to get in those analyst positions.
No, it's hard.
And for me to sit there and to have the respect of players and coaches every time I've called the game, it is a dream come true.
And you know the game, you played the game. It's not like you didn't play. You played a car. You went to Wake Forest, which is a great basketball school. We all know that. But to be out there, and I watch you, man. I always go down and say hello to the people down there. It could be the radio guy, it could be Gary Smith, who's been covering him. But I look at you, I'm like, dude, he's doing what he wants to do. And I know it's only going to continue to grow. And I want to also say the things that, so those of you that don't know, all the things that he does. I mean, he sent me some stuff. Hard in the Paint's one of the greatest names of all time, by the way. Because if that's how you play, my show should have just been called Three Pointer. Because it was before Three Pointers, but that's all I did was shoot. Everybody's like, don't you do anything else? I said, I like to shoot. You must have gone hard in the paint, HITP. I love this shot of you right there. That is strong to very strong. But talk about that and what that means, and what are you doing?
Yeah, when I started the radio show in 2019 on WLAE-TV at the time, when it was still a sports station.
Okay.
And I was the first African American to ever have a daily show in New Orleans on a major network.
Wow, congrats.
Which was huge for me.
Yes.
And again, with legends like Ro Brown and
some of the greats
who have come through New Orleans, for me to be the first, it was a huge honor. But when I was picking a name, I wanted to be representative of, I wanted to bring basketball culture to the forefront. It felt like New Orleans had not done that in sports. We were very football centric.
Yep.
And then the other part was, it was my attitude to where I wanted to be aggressive in talking to and addressing issues.
Yes.
Real
issues.
We weren't going to be a fluff show. It wasn't going to be a hot take show.
Right.
It was going to be, we're going to do some analysis. We're going to get deeper. And so I spent more time like you do, in a long form, where mostly on the radio, people are 8 minutes and they're out.
Yeah.
It's question, break. Well, I started doing longer form
Conversation. And getting into, instead of like having a set thing of questions and go with that. I've always eschewed the set thing of questions, because you don't really get to know unless you follow up that question. if you hear something interesting, hey, tell me more about it, right?
You have to be prepared to listen.
Right.
You do your prep work and you do your research, and I want to know about you. So in case you do go somewhere that's really interesting that I hadn't planned on, yeah, I want to keep going. I don't want to drag you back to my agenda.
Right.
Let's follow that really cool road.
That's a great way to put it. That is a great way to put it. Yeah. When you have a set thing of questions and you don't want to stray from it, you're following your agenda, not your guest's agenda. And your guest might not even have an agenda, but you're not taking it where the direction he's obviously leading you, right?
Yeah.
Or she,
I mean, like a quick example, Shannon Sharp. With his show and the Cat Williams thing that has become this viral sensation. I think there's a difference sometimes where, and Shannon's gotten a little bit of criticism for the inability to follow up. And I think that, like letting your guest say something really provocative, but not having that second question.
Right.
You've got to have that second question.
Always ready. Well, let me tell you, look, you've been doing stuff with Maddie Hudak, who was a recent guest. She's obviously Tulane's great sideline reporter in football. But I want everybody to know exactly everything you do. Tell me, Hard in the Paint, I mean, what are the other aspects of it? And here's Maddie right here. We can start with her, but then I want you to continue. This is called
Before the Whistle.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Like one of the things that I wanted to start doing was producing other talented people.
Right.
And Maddie was the first person that I reached out to. We've had a really good working and personal relationship over the years. It started off with her being a guest on my podcast.
She's outstanding.
And
she's outstanding.
If anybody's watching, they know she's one of the best sideline reporters in the country. She just takes such an active and aggressive role with it, and she wanted to redefine it. And you can just see Maddie is deeply thoughtful, but she also, again, has a very great personality, a big personality.
Certainly.
And we launched her show in April and gave her the summer to kind of grow into it.
Yeah.
And as the season hit, we were targeting an audience that had not really been serviced. Tulane football fans kind of get pushed to the wayside.
Thank you. Thank you. They don't on this show. They don't. I mean, listen, I worked at WWL, and they said, hey, if you're going to put Tulane in any lead, they better have won a national championship. Mm-hmm. And this was when they were 2-10, so they weren't winning any national. But I think that UNO, Tulane, Dillard, Suno,
Xavier.
Loyola, Xavier, all of them deserve our respect. I've had people from each one of those teams on this show at one point. But Tulane, I continue to give them a lot of respect. And because when they were doing that great things in that season, I kept having Pratt, Tyjae Spears, Nick Anderson. I mean, I just went and I said, these are all outstanding young men. And so I love that you're servicing them because they have felt like the redhead stepchild for too long in the city.
Absolutely. And they have a passionate fan base, and they have a national fan base. We found out just through Maddie's podcast just how many people and where they come from and who listen to her show. And just the following has just increased so quickly. We got her up over 15,000 downloads.
Wow.
And very fast, with no advertising, with just Maddie's work ethic and people coming in. And she's had guests like Sean King. She's been able to get national guests to come on and talk to her because of her reputation.
Yeah. And
then, of course, just this growing Tulane audience.
It's great. And you're also doing great things. Was it Reggie Flood?
Yeah.
Talk about what's happening there as well.
Yeah, we worked out an agreement between Hard to Paint Sports Media and WBOK so that we do the sports report 4 days a week with Reggie Flood.
Okay.
Over there.
Is it still 4 to 7 or?
Yeah.
I hope I'm not doing something old. Okay, good. 4 to 7, right on.
I'm there Mondays, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Ro Brown is in on Tuesdays with Reggie.
My man.
But we have a blast. And again, we try to view it as a show that's a combination of information and entertainment. Like we want it to be where folks feel like they came away with something, as well as just had a good time.
Hard in the Paint, I don't know if we got to it. How can people find you there?
Anywhere you get your podcasts. And then, of course, we have on YouTube the Hard to Paint Sports Media channel, which has all of our podcasts. Hard to Paint, the Bird Calls, which goes with the Bird Rights.
Yeah.
And then Maddie's podcast as well.
Let's talk about Bird Calls. Let's talk about Bird Rights and Bird Calls because that's our friend Ali Cosell. He was doing that for years. And is he and you still involved together? Okay. Let's talk about that.
So SB Nation last year has this giant community of websites that cover the NBA, but they let some of those go.
Got the bucket hat. All right.
That's right, baby.
There you go.
Always stay branded.
Right, dude.
And they let the brand go, and we took it over and rebuilt the site and made it ours. And what we decided is that we wanted to make it the home really for Pelicans news and analysis. Again,
y'all are so passionate, David.
we love talking.
Y'all were like I was years ago. Like for 25 years, I was that dude like crazy. And I still love it. Don't think I don't look at every game and watch every box score. But y'all sitting by these two during a game, Now, granted, you're gonna only hear them, but the fact is like you're gonna learn something for sure. And I've been around the game my whole life. I'm like, these guys got a point. Okay.
Yeah,
it's something to see.
We're talking about doing some live of us watching games together.
It would be unbelievable.
And letting fans see what it's like to sit around us, because you're not the first person to say it is an experience.
It's an experience.
Sitting with you two guys during a game.
Let's say even within 5 seats of you, because it's like they got their own dialogue going.
There were times when the arena was not as full.
Right.
Let's just
say that, and everybody's hearing you.
And there was occasionally we had gotten word from people that like, we can hear you 9 rows down. We can hear you near
very
the court.
Clearly. That's my point. I'm like 5 seats over. I'm like, I can hear him clearly. I got this down. It's great though. It's passion, and if you want passion in your sports, you got David Grubb. But that basketball thing, I can totally vouch for everything about that. Speaking of basketball, I was going to go with what happened last night first, but I'm going to do that later. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Pelicans, because this sometimes can be the most frustrating exercise. I went through each game. I mean, this is how much I'm into it. I may not be going to every game anymore, but I'm at Christmas, the night after Christmas, I'm in Atlanta. My kids, they grew up there. They're big Pelicans fans. They're big Saints fans. They're big Tiger fans. They knew. But I'm listening to the Memphis 116-115 overtime. I mean, we had just blew a 24-point lead 1 week earlier at home, and then I'm like, okay, we got this one, y'all. And we're listening on the radio, on the computer. That's how much we're into it. My son's a guitar player.
And there's nobody better to listen to than Graf.
Right, and we're just listening, and then we just watch them blow it. Now, granted, we know the great wins, but that 12 streak when they had the 9-3 in the 12 games. Those 3 games should be won. I know everybody says they should be won, but those 3 until the Clippers lost. You shouldn't have had any losses. And I'm like, but I can't complain because they won 72. They beat the Timberwolves. Yeah, talk to me.
They're such a frustrating team in the sense that you're waiting for consistency.
Right, yes.
Consistency is the step to, before you can be great, you got to be consistent. Right. And, they've had 3 chances this year to get to a 5-game winning streak, and they've lost all 3 of those.
After 4-game winning streaks.
After 4 games,
right.
So, and they've only had, since Willie Green has been the coach. Well, actually, you go back to the playoff season with Anthony Davis.
Yes.
Since then, the Pelicans have only had 3 winning streaks of at least 5 games.
Oh my gosh.
In 5+ seasons. So, getting to that level of just being a consistently good team, they have some fantastic wins this year. The Kings, having 4 wins over the Kings, and all of them being essentially blowout victories.
It's crazy, right? I mean, that's one of those teams everybody loves, right? Nationally, the Kings, and the Pelicans have whipped them consistently.
And up until this Clippers game, they had beaten the Clippers 10 out of 11. They've had success against some of the best teams in the West, but they've always faltered against some of the lower level teams. But this year, they got an above 500 so far record on the road. They've given away some home games that they shouldn't have.
Right.
But I think this month of January is where the tale will be told for this team.
Yeah.
This is their hardest month.
Right.
15 difficult games, and most of them are on the road.
Right.
So I think if they can get through this, they legitimately have a chance to be a top 5 team in the West.
No question.
And that is where the first step is, getting out of the play-in. Like, they cannot finish in that 7 through 10 range anymore.
No.
They've got to be firmly in the playoff.
You got to be in that. And here's the thing. I'm trying to take myself out of being a homer, right? So I want to look at this, and you're the same way. I want to look at this with perspective, because we all knew if they were healthy, they could be very dangerous. They're more dangerous than I even thought they could be when they're healthy, because they have this mix now. They have the youth and the leadership, but they have guys that can do different things. And when they bring in that defensive core, obviously with Alvarado, and you keep Herbin, and you got Marshall coming back. I mean, I love watching these dudes. It's like the basketball we grew up with. Like, you're hustling, you're doing everything, man, and it's just so much fun to watch. But you got that leadership with CJ. You got guys that now can shoot. Trey Murphy, it could be one of the greats. I mean, he could be really one of the greats to ever play in the city. And there's so many different pieces, and that's what I want you to talk about, the combinations and things they can do there.
Yeah, the versatility of the team is really its strength. The fact that it has a bunch of these guys who are between 6'5" and 6'9", who can play different positions, can switch a lot of things. And you see, over the last 29 games, 30 games, they've been the best defensive team in the NBA.
Yes, well, you can defend.
That travels.
It travels.
In every sport.
Right.
In every
That's
sport.
Michigan, right? Last Washington, I should say. Last
If you
night.
can defend, you give yourself an opportunity every night because shooting comes and goes. There's going to be rough nights where you're just not putting it in the bucket.
Sure.
But if you defend, you give yourself a chance. And also, I think the Pelicans are so connected to their defense because two of your guys are not natural energy guys.
Right.
Zion and B.I.
Well,
are
that's
not
great.
high energy guys by
say,
nature.
I just talked about every other player on the team. I hadn't even mentioned Zion and B.I., and I was going to say that next, but I'm glad you said it. That speaks volumes of where they're at because we only used to mention them.
Yes.
And now, okay, keep going.
So, that defense gets them going. When they start off the first quarter and the defense is active, that means Zion is getting in transition and getting layups. That means he's getting the ball inside and able to kick out for open threes. You're seeing them much more of these games with Zion, CJ, and B.I. all getting 5 assists plus.
The spacing becomes so much better
easier.
Because if these guys are all on the court at the same time, that's when it's really dangerous because that means everybody else is getting open shots. Everybody. That's when me and you, hey, we're back, baby.
Yes.
And that's the beauty thing. Herb has now learned to hit a three. That's why I say they're so dangerous. I don't want to get too excited because we know there's that next injury right around the corner, and all of a sudden that balloon bursts. But the fact is when you look at this, and I don't want to do pie in the sky, but they're certainly one of the teams in contention because the West is very strong.
Yes.
But there's no team out there that I'm like, we can't beat them.
No, I mean, even the Nuggets, the Pelicans have had very good games against the Nuggets and have beaten them a couple of times.
Right.
I don't know if they can beat them in a 7-game series, but the first step on the way to being a really good team is being a really good regular season team. And I think the Pelicans are on that path. On a night-to-night basis, it is incredibly hard to match up with the New Orleans Pelicans.
No
Individual,
doubt.
if you got them for one night in town, to get prepared for as many people as they have who can score 20 points.
Yeah, this is a good example. Right on cue. 6 guys in double digits that game recently. They have guys that can step up, and that's and when Larry Nance came back, I got to tell you this.
When he's healthy, yes.
Dude, I love this guy. People forget that this guy was kind of a throw-in some ways in the trade. I've always loved him, and I knew his leadership was great, and he's an off-the-court guy as well, just like CJ is, but it's even way better than I thought. And when he comes back, it's almost like a glue that puts that last little piece in saying, oh, my God, we have a guy that can stop you on defense, coming off the bench, do whatever he needs to do. I got chills right now thinking about it. For real.
The only things that I would say that are standing in the Pelicans' way is I think they could use one more backup big.
Okay.
I think that's something that as you get towards the playoffs,
sure.
And you talk about, Jonas is at his best between 25 and 32 minutes.
Right on.
Those other 16 in the playoffs, fouls get called at a higher rate. The game slows down. You're going to be playing against teams that have some bigs up front.
I agree with you completely.
Just another backup big, I think, in that position would be really nice.
A lot of things can happen in those 16 minutes when he's off the court.
And you also worry, most of your backups right now, you're still counting on guys who have missed a lot of games over the last several seasons. Cody Zeller hasn't played more than 40 games in 4 years.
Right.
Larry Nance hasn't played more than 40 games in 4 years.
Wow, okay.
So you're still counting on guys who have been injured.
Oh, wow.
As well as they played, you'd love to have that break in case of emergency.
That's why you guys got to go hard in the paint and listen to this analysis, because I follow it, and I didn't even realize those two guys hadn't played that little. Hey, real quick, I got it. You're a Michigan guy. Let's get the basis of how this happened. You're a Detroit guy. You love the Lions. I have a lot of pictures of you with Detroit Tiger hats. Lions shirts, Michigan stuff, Detroit versus everybody. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to try to give you the floor, but I want 15 seconds. Till I'm blue in the face, tell people how much I love Detroit. And they don't understand it. I said, I love the town. It's gritty. I remember going in 2008 when I was agent, and I had Brian Butch playing at the Ford Field, and then it was Wisconsin, Kansas, Davidson with Steph Curry.
Yes.
And I remember I went 3 extra days on purpose. I love this. And I went to Motown Museum, Ford, the Henry Ford Museum. I went around. I went to that casino thing, and I just went around. A lot of the town, like New Orleans, has become repressed, right? But it's a town that's just got something I love about it. And I don't want to know what your passion is for it. Are you from there? Give us the background.
Yeah, I'm the only one of my siblings to be born there. We moved here when I was just about 4 years old. It's funny because the year we moved to New Orleans, the Lions had just gone 1-15.
1-15.
The Saints go 1-15 the next year.
Oh, you moved in 79, 70. Okay.
So we get 1-15 with the Lions, and the next year the Saints go 1-15.
Not good. Not good. 2-30 is not good.
No. I was conditioned to watch really bad football when I was a kid.
Right.
Either because I was both a Lions fan and a Saints fan.
Still both.
Still both.
And so this is going to be a great year for the Lions.
Yeah, if you ask me, Barry Sanders is obviously my favorite player of all time. I have an autograph of Barry on my wall that sits right in front of my desk.
Great player to have is your all-time favorite. Mine's Pistol Pete, but Barry Sanders, what a great role model, great player, right?
And at the same time, my Saints loyalty, because it's weird because I'm sitting in my dad's seats, and he's made a promise, for that Lions game. He's told the people in his row he'd never sell his tickets to somebody from another team.
Right, good.
But I'm his son, so he didn't sell them to me, he gave them to me.
Right.
And for that one game, it's just that one game when they do come down, I get to cheer for my team. Every other week, I'm rooting for the Saints.
100%. You're rooting for another team last night that won it all. We got to talk about them real quick because the Michigan Wolverines hadn't won anything since 1997, championship-wise, right?
Yeah.
And that might be the only one in your lifetime because a lot of the championships they have are from the early 1900s, but that's still one of the great, most wins of any program. Most wins of any program. So good.
2004.
Tell us how great this was for you, because I remember 2003 when LSU won their first title in my lifetime, how great that was.
Yeah, I was fortunate in 97 to get to watch that team from a distance, obviously. Charles Woodson winning the Heisman and then beating
great year.
Washington State. So it's kind of like it was set up in a very similar way. Michigan goes through this thing of winning the Rose Bowl, which they had to do that year they won the national championship, and beating the Heisman runner-up. Ryan Leaf was the guy in 97. Michael Penix was the guy this year, a team from Washington. And it just, the closing out of Michigan, the Big Ten champ, ending the Pac-12.
Is your daughter with you?
Yes, that is.
That's your daughter. Wow, that's so great,
She's up to 15 now. And
she's 15. Such pride there, huh?
Yeah, I love that kid so much.
Yeah, there's nothing like having that. But here, I'm running out of time, unfortunately, but I love the passion you show for everything. I love that your team just won last night, too. Real quick, I don't have time, but do you think they could have beaten the 2019 Tigers? They could beat them.
Heck of a game.
They'd be a heck of a game because defense travels.
One of the best defenses ever against one of the best offenses ever.
The thing about this team here, and I'm just saying it, I heard Matt Moscona retweeted Mike Greenberg's statement from 19 after. He says, I'm not here to argue who's the best of all time because that's nobody can win that argument.
Right.
But he just put facts out. He goes, this team beat 7 of the top 10. They beat 4 of the top 5. They beat the preseason top 4, which has never been done before. They beat all 4 of them by an average of 20 points. And, it was just on. And they won every award, everything you gave. But the defense, that's why they would give Michigan a chance. McCarthy's good enough. That's one of the best quarterbacks I think Michigan's had in a long time. But that defense is so damn fast and so strong up the middle. It was impressive to watch.
Tackling. Again.
The tackling is sick. I kept thinking, why can't we hire this coach to coach the Saints on our LSU? LSU defensive, they can't tackle. And anyway, I'm running out of time. We give gifts here. Shays de la Shays. You can go to De La Shays or Shays de la Shays, which is on Maple by Tulane. And then Task Performance.
Thank you so much.
David, I love you, bro. I appreciate you. I think you're great. And I follow your career since I've gotten to know you, and it's been great. And I know you're going to keep on climbing. So check out Hard in the Paint. Check out Before the Whistle.
Before the Whistle
and all the other things he's doing, obviously, with Reggie Flood as well. So, hey, I got to thank so many people out here. My man Will, you continue to show me William Hill is the best producer in the land. And I've now been with him almost 8 years. Love that guy. Continue it. I love you. Hey, Logan, hope you did well in your surgery. Also, Alex, phenomenal. Danielle, I appreciate you. And, of course, Stan, the man who helps us with our spots, and then Jim and Ron. I want to thank everybody here, and especially today, David Grubb and my man, Tyrone Hughes. Guess who I'm going to have next week? Oh, the guy that Tulane just got a quarterback, Ty Thompson, is coming right here. The guy from Oregon, the best recruit they've ever had, will be on Primetime Sports next week. Stay tuned. We'll see you then.